Imagine stepping back in time, over 300 years, to the bustling streets of Boston in the year 1700. What would you see? What would you hear? We are about to embark on a journey, using the latest AI technology, to reconstruct this colonial town and bring its past to life. In 1700, Boston was the largest and most prosperous town in British North America. Its population had swelled to around 7,000 souls, all packed into a small peninsula connected to the mainland by a thin strip of land called the Boston Neck. This wasn't the sprawling city we know today. It was a tight-knit community, a labyrinth of narrow, winding streets, and a vibrant hub of trade and politics. Let's start our walk at the heart of it all, the waterfront. The Long Wharf, though not yet extended to its full half-mile length, was the town's lifeline. Picture it, towering masts of ships from England, the West Indies, and other colonies, swaying gently in the harbour. The air is thick with the smell of saltwater, tar, and exotic spices. Sailors shout in different dialects, and merchants haggle over prices. Barrels of molasses, crates of rum, and bales of tobacco are being loaded and unloaded by hard-working dockhands. This is the engine of Boston's economy, a constant flurry of activity from dawn till dusk. As we move away from the docks, the wooden buildings crowd closer together. Most are 2 or 3 stories high, with steep, gabled roofs and small, diamond-paned windows. Fires were a constant threat, so you'd see buckets of water placed outside many homes. The streets are unpaved, turning to mud in the rain and dust in the sun. Here comes a wealthy merchant, dressed in a fine woolen coat, buckled shoes, and a powdered wig, discussing the latest shipment with his associate. Over there, a group of apprentices, clad in simple leather aprons, hurry on an errand for their master. The soundscape of 1700 Boston is a symphony of its own. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer striking an anvil echoes from a nearby workshop. The rhythmic soaring of wood comes from a shipwright's yard, where new vessels are taking shape. The rumble of horse-drawn carts and the clatter of their wooden wheels on the cobblestones are ever present. And above it all, the ringing of church bells, marking the hours and calling the faithful to worship. Religion was the bedrock of life in Puritan Boston. The town was dotted with meeting houses, simple, unadorned wooden structures that served as both places of worship and centers for community meetings. The Old South Meeting House, while not the structure we know today, was a prominent landmark. On Sundays, the entire town would pause. Families would file into the pews for long, impassioned sermons delivered by formidable ministers like Cotton Mather. These sermons weren't just about theology, they shaped public opinion and moral conduct. Let's wander down King Street, the main thoroughfare leading from the Long Wharf to the townhouse. This is the political and commercial centre. The townhouse itself is an impressive wooden building, the seat of the colonial government. Inside, the royal governor, the council, and the assembly debate the laws of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Important proclamations are read from its balcony to the crowds gathered below. Surrounding it are shops and taverns. Taverns were more than just places to drink. They were social hubs, news exchanges, and business centres. Inside a place like the Green Dragon Tavern, men would gather by the fire, smoking clay pipes and sipping ale or rum. They'd exchange news from arriving ships, debate the latest acts from Parliament in London, and conduct business deals. These taverns were the incubators of revolutionary ideas that would erupt decades later. Imagine sitting in a corner, listening as a ship captain recounts tales of the Caribbean, while a group of craftsmen quietly discusses the rising taxes. Let's talk about the people. Life was hard work for most. A craftsman, like a cooper or a silversmith, would start his day at sunrise. His workshop was often on the ground floor of his home. His apprentices would live with him, learning the trade in exchange for room and board. Paul Revere's father, Apollo's Rivoire, was one such craftsman, a talented silversmith who established his shop in Boston during this era. We can't forget the intellectual life of the town. Just across the Charles River in Cambridge was Harvard College, already over 60 years old, training the next generation of ministers and leaders. Boston itself was a center of printing and bookselling. You could walk into a bookseller's shop and find not only Bibles and religious tracts but also almanacs, pamphlets on current events, and works of history and science from Europe. As we walk, we might pass the town granary, a public storehouse for grain, and next to it, the burying ground. These old cemeteries, with their winged skull and soul effigy gravestones, are a somber reminder of the fragility of life. Let's imagine the domestic scene. A typical home was centered around the hearth, the main source of heat and the place for all cooking. A father would return from his work in the fields on the edge of town, or from his shop downtown. His sons might be helping him or studying their letters. The evening meal would be simple, perhaps a stew or porridge. Life was governed by the sun and the seasons. As dusk settles over Boston, the town begins to quiet down. Oil lamps and candles flicker to life in the windows, casting a warm glow on the dark streets. The watchman begins his rounds, carrying a lantern and calling out the hour, 10 o'clock, and all's well. The sounds of the day, the hammering, the shouting, the cartwheels, are replaced by the gentle lapping of water against the wharf and the distant cry of a gull. This AI-reconstructed glimpse into Boston in 1700 reveals a town on the cusp of greatness. It was a place of deep faith and burgeoning commerce, of communal spirit and fierce independence. It was a community of hard-working men building a new world, a world whose foundations were laid in these very streets, shipyards, and meeting houses. The seeds of revolution were being sown not in grand declarations, but in the everyday conversations in taverns, the debates in the townhouse, and the independent spirit of a people shaping their own destiny far from the shores of England. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. It's incredible to think how this small, wooden town would grow into the major city it is today, yet still carry the echoes of its colonial past. If you enjoyed this historical reconstruction, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more dives into history. See you next time.